So I want to touch on a couple things. You said that you changed your diet, supplements, all of that stuff. When you need to detox your body and heal it, it's not just about throwing the right foods and the supplements at it, it's what you're also taking away. So
Right.
you can't just continue living your life and using the toxic laundry detergent and the toxic water and all this stuff and then throw supplements at it. It's what we're taking away and putting in. The other thing that I have to make an emphasis on because I'm so passionate about it at the moment. I've got an 18-year-old daughter and all of her friends are wanting to be on birth control, not for the birth control, but for their painful periods.
Yeah.
But what they don't know is that it is itself an endocrine disruptor. It's hard on the liver and it's only prolonging the damage for
Mhm.
your fertility or for your menopausal symptoms later
Mhm.
on in life or pro cancers. And that's not the way to handle it. And I also want to emphasize you went through this, what, 25 or 15 years ago? Right now, our toxic load is so much worse than when you were going through this. So there's so many people that are dealing with this now versus back when you were. And
Mhm.
um, so that all being said, let's dive into the liver. What does it do? Why is it so important? No one looks at it when they're having unexplained weight gain or headaches or hair falling out or they're not processing their nutrients.
Mhm.
It does so much, but dive into the liver.
Yeah. So let's really paint the picture, especially for women here. I love that you talked about, these young women who are looking at birth control as an option for painful, irregular periods, because that's exactly why I started taking birth control when I was 16,
Yeah.
is that they were extremely irregular. Like I would go months without them and then it would arrive. I would get my period and it would be so intense. I would be like sitting on the toilet, hovering over a trash can with an upset stomach and nausea. And so, of course, at that time, like the solution and the answer that I received was the birth control pill,
Right.
which, yes, it did stop those symptoms from happening, but um, it also had its own impacts on my body that we'll get into a little bit. But what I want to backtrack that too is that for these women out there that are having painful irregular periods, this is a signature sign that your liver is congested.
Yes.
It is 100% related to liver congestion and a lot of the toxins that are in our environment. So when you're having painful irregular periods, specifically painful periods, heavy periods, a lot of PMS, that can strongly correlate with estrogen dominance. So can weight gain or weight loss resistance, right? And one of the things that the liver does for us is it helps to get rid of excess estrogen in the body. So we live in an environment where we have high estrogen compounds, like things like plastic, BPA. We also have other endocrine disrupting types of toxic chemicals and components in our environment, or we have even, there are chemicals and toxins that are classified as xenoestrogens, meaning like things like phthalates and parabens, like they actually elevate or mimic estrogen in the body, right? So they are creating a scenario where the body thinks it has excess estrogen from these mimicking toxins, essentially. And then on top of that, the toxins themselves are causing the lymphatic system to be sluggish. They're slowing down the liver, they're backing it up. Think of it like a toilet, or a sink where there's a backup that's happening. And the liver then can't get rid of all of these things because there's just too much in the body and they get trapped. And then we get these symptoms and signals of things like excess estrogen that are happening in the body. And I love, Sarah, that you're so passionate about talking about the load of toxins that are in our world right now, because this is like a superhuman experiment, basically. There
It
has
is.
never been a time in history ever before that we have had to deal with or encounter so many toxins. Like, so the statistically speaking, like after the industrial age, like 120,000 toxins or whatever was released in the environment, and that was years. Like that statistic is old now.
Mhm.
I've yet to see an update on what that number is, but I'm going to say we're probably close to at least 300,000. Part of what's wrong with this equation and why this happens is because when companies submit to our government agency, the EPA, to get a toxin or a chemical approved, there's no requirement that they have to check to see how it interacts with other elements,
Right.
right, which can create other toxicities. And so we just don't have a good system in place. We allow way too many of these things in our environment. And yes, we have a detox system, but our detox system has never had to handle this amount of a load ever before.
I
And we
love I love that you're saying that, because a lot of people will say you don't need to do detoxes because the liver's meant to detox. The liver's meant to detox what our ancestors dealt with, not
right.
what we're dealing with today.
Yeah.
And I did a podcast on the fact that the number one cause of children's chronic disease is not processed food.
Hmm.
Processed food makes it a lot worse. It's chemicals. It
Hmm.
is chemicals, because those chemicals, like you're saying, are not regulated by the government.
Yes, exactly. And so when we think about things like hair loss and weight gain, especially when you're quote unquote doing all the right things, which is a lot of the clients that I work with in my practice, they're already eating paleo or whole 30 or AIP or gone keto or carnivore. They're already exercising. I mean, shoot, a lot of these people even have gone down the road of getting all these like biohacking types of tools in their homes, like infrared saunas and different, modalities like that. And yet they're still struggling in their very specific way. And
Yeah.
when we do testing, what I find is like a client literally that just started with me last week. She, on her Dutch test, we can see that she's got elevated estrogen in her body. We can look at estrogen metabolism, that phase one estrogen metabolism, and see that the way that her liver is trying to handle estrogen is not great. We also saw indications for insulin resistance, because even though she's eating healthy, she's eating too many carbohydrates for what her body can handle, because our world is so carb centric versus fat and protein centric, which is what most people need more of. And also, we did a toxins panel. She has super high BPA in her body, amongst a couple other chemicals that are specifically related to xenoestrogens and endocrine disruptors. And she is exactly what you just described, Sarah. She's losing her hair. She's been taking some type of hair loss like medication. I can't even remember what it's called. She's struggling to lose weight regardless of going keto and trying some other things. She's also on her third round of kidney stones.
Mm.
The first one was 2 millimeters. The second one was 5. Her current kidney stone is 9 millimeters, which she does not want to have to pass. I mean, I wouldn't either. So we're working on strategies to dissolve it. And this is where we really have to look at what are the inputs into the body that are creating these scenarios. And, our body naturally wants to be in balance. So that's where I think we really have to pay attention to what are the unnatural elements and inputs into the body that are disrupting that delicate balance of it.
Right. And with her kidney stones, she might be eating too many healthy oxalate foods, the spinach and the almonds and the nuts and the berries and the chocolate. Those are things that cause the urogenital issues, the brain fog, the joint pain. These things you're like, I don't know where this is coming from, because just like you said, these are the people that are trying to do everything right.
Right.
And it doesn't make sense. And it's not a lack of willpower. We don't think that you're binging in your closet at night. We know that you're telling us the truth, but
Right.
these symptoms are a sign that something's not right. So number one, be your own doctor. The blood test and what your doctor's saying is normal. If you don't feel good, it's not normal. So
Mhm.
you've got to then come to someone like Jenn to really dig a little deeper. What are the symptoms or signs that your liver is backed up and struggling?
I mean, I think it could be pretty much anything, right? Because The liver doesn't just detox for us, it's where we convert like blood glucose and into glycogen, and it's part of our metabolism. It's where we convert thyroid, a large majority of our thyroid hormone. And the thyroid is our master metabolism agent. Like, it helps us to stay warm or regulate body temperature and lose weight and grow hair and nails and have avoid having dry skin and dry eyes, which I see a lot with people also, like losing hair or brittle nails, that dry skin stuff, a lot of like quote unquote thyroid symptoms. But you got to ask the question, like, is it really a thyroid problem, or is there something downstream that is happening? Any kind of bloating and digestive upset as well too, because if the liver is overloaded with all these toxins and it can't do its job to get them out, and they're getting trapped in the body, or the thyroid can't do its job, or we have too much estrogen circulating in the body, all of those things can also negatively impact the delicate tissue of the intestinal lining and our digestive system. And then we develop food sensitivities, which we may not know about. I mean, this client that I was just talking about, you're totally right, Sarah. She had 47 food sensitivities, and we saw a very specific pattern with high oxalate foods, or any oxalates in general, and also a lectin sensitivity pattern. So what does that tell me? That tells me, one, she's probably got some mold going on in her house because of the oxalates and some of her symptoms. But two is that she's in a very pro-inflammatory state. Like, these foods are not necessarily problematic when the body is in balance, but when we're very inflamed and we have what we call leaky gut, this like intestinal lining that's been damaged, or is not optimal and healthy, then these problems arise. And the liver is very much connected to this, essentially, in so many different ways.
It's not the food that you're eating, it's how the food you're eating is assimilating in your body and what it's going to do. And you touched on the liver and the gut, but you also touched on the liver and the thyroid. And I really want to unpack that connection because, like I said, when my liver was backed up, my thyroid numbers were in the tank, my hormones were in the tank, and I wasn't doing anything wrong or different. And then the other thing that was different too, I just want to mention this, my blood sugar was high. And I did not change anything because that is, your liver is processing the blood sugar and glucose.